Welcome to Fraud Friday. I'm Bob Coleman. Today I want to talk about diesel therapy. The reason why this has come up is, as you know, I've been following closely the Blue Acorn fraud trial, where two co-founders were sentenced to 10 years each for PPP loan fraud. I'm writing a book about that, Stephanie's Greed. It'll be coming out in April. The two principals are Stephanie Hawkridge. She received her 10-year sentence after being convicted by a jury. She's to report on February 20th to Bastrop, Texas. Her husband, Nathan Reese, was scheduled to self-report on January 20th. Now, what's interesting about the delay, specifically in Stephanie's case, is she's filed a motion for a staggered sentence, saying that her baby would effectively be an orphan if both parents are to serve the jail terms at the same time. She was originally also reported January 20th. Nathan, being the good guy he is, he said, I'll go first and then Stephanie can follow. I've reported on this before. The judge has yet to rule on that, so that's where we are in this situation. Now, regarding Nate's reporting date of January 20th, there are reports of him being seen in Puerto Rico after that date, indicating that he had a delay. That is nowhere in the court records that he had that delay. But all I know is while he was supposed to report in Bastrop, Texas on January 20th, if you go to Google Federal Inmate Prison Locator, he's in Sheridan, Oregon. Now, I don't know if he self-reported there or if he was a client of the federal government's Con Air diesel therapy program. I'm not saying he was, but I don't know why he ended up in Oregon when the judge said, hey, if you can accommodate this gentleman, let's try to have him serve in Texas. Why in Texas? Stephanie's parents are there. She's there. And so it makes sense that the family unit remains close by. So I'm not saying he's that happened to him, but it got me thinking about this is such a fascinating topic. I'm going to talk about that, what happens when you enter the federal prison system and get to participate in the government's diesel therapy program. Let me start with a gentleman by the name of George Hansen. No one knows who he is. He's a congressman from Idaho. Back in the 60s and 70s, he was a maverick. He didn't believe in filing his taxes. He owed taxes in the late 60s. He got kicked out of Congress by a mere 133 votes, and so he was being vetted for a job with the USDA, and they found out he didn't file his tax returns in the 5 years. He was an anti-tax crusader. He didn't like the IRS. He didn't file his tax returns. He was found guilty of a couple things. He was found guilty of 1978 of violating the 1978 Ethics in Government Act for failing to disclose $334,000 in personal loans to his campaign. He was sentenced to 6 months in prison, fined 40 grand. Now he appealed to the Supreme Court and they vacated it and the money is returned to him. But in 1992, he was in prison again on charges of defrauding 2 Idaho banks. He's a loan fraudster. And also 100 individuals in a $30 million investment scheme. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Now, why George is interesting is he was the only U.S. representative. Now we're digging deep into mid-20th century history during the Iranian hostage crisis. He went over there to try to personally negotiate the release of the hostages back in 1979. That didn't work, but he tried. But when he was there, he was shown the horrible human suffering that was inflicted upon the Iranian people by the Shah of Iran, by his secret police. He saw the torture chambers and what they did to the political prisoners. Not a pretty sight. My reporting here is from a website called educateyourself.org, and this is their diesel therapy report. Now, he testified before Congress about his experience when he was doing bank fraud on diesel therapy, which opponents state that it's a torture system that we use to torture our prisoners. He talked about the conditions, and then he got up and showed his legs and the scars from his experience in being transported all over the country. Let me tell you what diesel therapy is and sort of what he's saying happens. When you're in the federal system, you don't know part of this diesel therapy protocol is they don't tell you where you're going. You're given a 3 o'clock wake up call, told to grab your stuff, go down, and you're put on a bus. Now, opponents are saying there's no restroom breaks, there's no water. I don't believe that. We're still human beings, but some people say that, hey, you're not going to get that. And then they say the buses are, of course, if there are no bathroom breaks, you can imagine what the bus smells like. But you're in a system. You're not told where you're going. You're given a simple sandwich and bologna sandwich, and you are given water and restroom breaks, but not at your convenience. George Hansen at this time, I believe, was about a 60-year-old man, 6'3", 220 pounds. He's a big guy. So you're in this system, and it can be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and they transport you all over the country. You can go by Con Air. We know about that from the Nicolas Cage movie. And you're on the bus, and that's what the term diesel therapy comes by for the bus fumes that come out. One person claimed they were in the system for 7 months, that the prison wardens will take a problematic prisoner, put him on the bus, ship him off to another friend, and they do a prisoner swap. And you can imagine there are ways for this to be abused at times. So Con Air is interesting. They move 260,000 prisoners a year, but the conditions, again, you don't know where you're going. The guards don't tell you. You're told to shut up, and you're moved. They confine you. You're locked at the wrist. You're shackled to your ankles, and you're shackled with your partner in the seat next to you in the bus, and you're also chained to the seat. So for those of us who fly economy and complain, you can imagine being on a 12-hour bus ride in those type of circumstances. Now, it does say restroom breaks are limited, so obviously they're going to get breaks, and they may go water. Now, inmates are saying, and by the way, I've talked to a prisoner who has done this, and they say it's uncomfortable, but if you anticipate it, you don't eat, you fast, you mentally prepare for it. But if you're not mentally prepared, it can be very, very difficult process. So anyway, so Nate was supposed to report on January 20th. The first time I picked him up in the prison locator was a couple days ago. So there was a 2-week period. Again, I'm assuming, I don't know what happened, but somehow he got from Texas to Oregon. He may have self-reported in Oregon. We don't know. But let's go back to George's story. And George is saying, hey, I had this black box. I cut off my circulation. I'm an old guy. All my blood drained down to my legs. I couldn't move around. And that caused me severe physical problems, as he showed the other congressman his scars. And he claimed, George said, that the guards purposely gave him shoes too small, which enhanced his painful torture process. The the end result of this is we need to transport prisoners, and obviously we need to be safe and secure. But diesel therapy is a term widely used. It is a term that opponents use for saying that this should be outlawed, but the Supreme Court has said, hey, no, diesel therapy is legal as long as it is humane. So fascinating story of what's happening. One of One of the unfortunate side effects for the prisoner diesel therapy, no one can get a hold of them. Family doesn't know where he or she is. Attorneys don't know where they are, and they go in this black hole. And if you go to the Bureau of Prisons website, it says very clearly, if you're in transport, we're not going to report where they are. So it's a no man's land. You can do a combination of flights, and the flights can be, now their center hub is out of Oklahoma City, and they can put them all over the country. They can fly you, and there's numerous stops. The other thing that's interesting in the evening is you can be housed in the county jail. Well, individual county jails in certain parts of rural America could be a different experience than, say, LA County Jail. Not that I would want to experience either of those situations. And again, you're fed the standard sandwich bologna meal, very minimalistic, and you don't know where you're going to end up. They're not telling you that. What you're doing the next day, and you may not even move the next day. You may be sitting in that location for 2 or 3 days before they move you to somewhere else. So it is not a pleasant experience. I don't know if Nate experienced that himself, but I thought I'd tell you my personal story of knowing someone who went through that. He said it wasn't that bad. He said it was uncomfortable. He didn't enjoy it. Now this was in the state of California. He knew where he was going to go, but Bastrop, Texas to Sheridan, Oregon is over 2,000 miles. Hey, I'm Bob Coleman. Thank you for joining me for Fraud Friday.